Universal Center for Renovation presents historical and biblical Israelites. This video is strictly for educational purposes and commentary. This video is of biblical and secular historical literature, so enjoy. The Jew of Rome by author Lein Wagner. The original German title was called The Jüdischer Krieg, or The Jewish War. It was originally published in 1932 in Germany. The English translation was published in the UK or Britain in 1935. And in 1936, the US saw its first publication of this title. It was part of a trilogy, the final volume of Wagner Josephus trilogy. Following Josephus and the Jew of Palestine. The Jew of Rome is a sweeping historical novel centered on the life of Flavius Josephus, a first-century Israelite historian, who navigated the turbulent world of the Roman Empire during and after the destruction of the Second Temple, Jerusalem, in the year 70 AD. This book is a work of fiction, so the author, he imagines Josephus in a conflict, caught between loyalty to his Hebrew heritage and his role as a chronicler and collaborator within Roman society. He also points out the Roman Empire's view of Jews, exploring themes of exile, cultural assimilation, and the fraught relationship between East and West. Roman West and the Israelite East. He also points out issues and ideas like religious tolerance, persecution, and identity, powerful themes that reflect both the ancient setting and Wagner's own 20th century anxieties. Lein Wagner, born in the year 1884 and died in the year 1958, was a prominent German Jewish novelist, playwright, and intellectual, a fierce critic of Nazism. He was among the earliest exiled German writers to openly condemn Hitler and the Third Reich, even before their full rise to power. By the time The Jew of Rome was published, Wagner was already living in exile, first in France, then later in the US, having been targeted by Nazi propaganda and blacklisted. Though set in ancient Rome, the novel is widely understood as an allegory for the rise of fascism, anti-Semitism, and authoritarianism in 1930s Europe. It was Wagner's way of examining the moral compromise of intellectuals under tyranny. His works were burned in the infamous Nazi book burnings of 1933. Today you can buy this book on eBay for £175 or about 235 American dollars. eBay, Lein Wagner, The Jew of Rome. First printing first edition, 1935. Nice Walter Hodges jacket, 175 pounds. Some editions of the Jew of Rome features a cover design or dust jacket with artwork by C. Walter Hodges, a British illustrator, author, and historical scene designer, known for his detailed, historically accurate depictions, particularly of ancient and medieval subjects. Hodges was admired for his deep research into costume, architecture, and symbolism. His artwork often captures the emotional gravity and historical context of a book. Wikipedia article. C. Walter Hodges. Cyril Walter Hodges, born March 18th, 1909, died November 26, 2004, was an English artist and writer, best known for illustrating children's books and for helping to recreate Elizabethan theatre. He won the annual Greenaway Medal for British children's book illustrations in 1964. Cyril Walter Hodges was born in Beckenham, Kent, the son of Cyril Hodges, a leading figure in advertising and copywriting. He was educated at Dulwich College and at Goldsmiths College of Art. The Jew of Rome was published by Hutchison and Company in London in 1935. This is the most common edition featuring Hodges' artwork. It often comes in a black or gray cloth binding, sometimes with gilt lettering on the spine. The dust jacket, if present, is the key collector's item. Hodges' name added literary and artistic credibility, especially for collectors of interwar book illustration or historical fiction with visual significance. In the C. Walter Hodges' cover illustration for the Jew of Rome, Josephus is often depicted with a noticeably brown or darker skin tone, unusual for the 1930s. In the 1930s, when many illustrations defaulted to whitewashed, classical ideal forms, especially in British publishing, Hodges' depiction was subtly radical. It not only humanizes Josephus, but also forces the viewer to acknowledge his ethnic and cultural roots, which is central to the novel's narrative. And so, I asked the chat or artificial intelligence some questions so I could get some deeper insight behind this remarkable cover. Walter Hodges illustrated the cover of the Jew of Rome. Josephus is depicted as an Afro Semite. Jews as people of color is clearly shown by this British artist. The reply from the chat was yes, exactly. C. Walter Hodges was a meticulous illustrator who often grounded his historical art in authenticity rather than convention. In his 1935 cover illustration of the Jew of Rome, he chose to depict Josephus with a deep brown complexion and Afro Semitic features. That was a deliberate, artistic, and cultural choice, especially striking for the 1930s, when most Western depictions of ancient Jews leaned towards Europeanized features. Hodges instead emphasized historical fidelity. aligning Josephus more closely with the Semitic peoples of the Levant who were not pale, but had darker earth tone complexions. It was a counter narrative to Aryan ideology at a moment when Nazi Germany was rising and racial purity myths were being enforced. This British cover artist essentially underlined the fact that Jews were historically people of color, not Aryans. It was cultural honesty. By giving Josephus his Afro Semitic presence, Hodges was visually reminding readers that Jewish history is tied to Africa and the Near East, not to racialized categories Hitler was pushing. So the cover itself functions as both art and political statement, an instance that the Jewish people at their roots cannot be assimilated into Europe's racial myths. I thought the chat comments were interesting. It led me to remember a quote that I read in a book about some of the troubles of World War II were extreme because some of the Germans viewed the Jews of Europe as being black or of dark skin tones, and it was impossible to racially assimilate them into a white Aryan nation. The name of the book was The New World Order by A. Ralph Epperson. Epperson's The New World Order is a non-fiction work with a conspiratorial worldview. Its main thesis and themes include the idea that there's a hidden elite or network that has been working for centuries behind the scenes to control governments, finance, religion, education, etc. There was a certain quote that caught my attention. The Führer, German for leader in this case meaning Mr. Hitler, saw in the Jewish people, with their black hair and swarthy complexion, the dark side of the human species, while the blond and blue-eyed Aryans constituted the light side of humanity. That quote is indeed striking. This quote appears in A. Ralph Epperson's The New World Order and is used in the context of explaining the duality of good and evil, light versus dark, that Epperson believes secret societies or esoteric traditions are based on. Epperson seems to be emphasizing a symbolic split. Light equals good, dark equals evil, in physical appearance and also moral and metaphysical or spiritual terms. The language of swarthy and black hair as signs of the dark side echoes centuries of racist pseudoscience. It equates appearance with morality, which is a core feature of the fascist and white supremacist ideologies. White supremacists have long promoted the idea that light skin, especially blonde hair, blue eyes, equals purity, goodness, civilization, superiority, and dark skin features equals corruption, evil, chaos, inferiority. This worldview is deeply rooted in pseudoscience, especially 19th and 20th century racial science, amplified by Nazi ideology, especially through their idealization of the so-called Aryan race. Jews could not assimilate into this world view because Jews have dark and light skin tones. The paradox of Jewish diversity. Jews are a diasporic people, meaning over centuries they have lived in and adapted to many cultures. Some have light skin, for example, Ashkenazi Jews from Europe. Some have dark skin, for example, Mizrahi Jews from the Middle East, Ethiopian Jews, Indian Jews, etc. This ethnic and racial diversity confused and enraged white supremacists because it made Jewish identity uncontainable within their rigid categories. Hitler added this thought: well, yes, we are barbarians, and barbarians we wish to remain. It does us honor. It is we who will rejuvenate the world. The present world is near its end. Our only task is to sack it. This is a chilling and revealing statement. It appears in the New World Order by A. Ralph Epperson. And though the book includes it, the original quote is attributed to Adolf Hitler or one of his closest ideological allies, used to express the fascist glorification of destruction as a form of renewal. This is not just poetic nihilism, it's a declaration of ideological war against civilization, morality, and democracy. These are the key ideas in the quote. We are barbarians, embracing the label as a point of pride, rejecting civilized norms, enlightenment, or humanism. It does us honor, claiming moral superiority and being anti modern, anti democratic, and anti humanitarian. Rejuvenate the world. This is the fascist myth of created destruction. The belief that by tearing down the current world order, a new, pure world can emerge. Our only task is to sack it. A pure statement of destruction for destruction's sake. It's not about reforming society, it's about obliterating it. This quote perfectly captures the fascist mentality, especially as it developed in Nazi Germany. This is a rejection of modern liberal values. Democracy, equality, pluralism, and rationalism are seen as weaknesses. Fascists glorify violence, willpower, and hierarchy over dialogue and cooperation. They see barbarism as virtue. The quote embraces being called barbarians because it suggests strength, purity, and freedom from moral constraint. Civilized norms like empathy, law, and diplomacy are viewed as decadent. The Nazis also had the myth of cleansing by the apocalypse. The idea that the world must be destroyed to be reborn is central to fascist and some revolutionary ideologies. It justifies cruelty, war, and destructions of whole groups of people as means to a higher end. In the New World Order, Epperson includes quotes like this to argue that there is a hidden agenda by elites to tear down existing moral and religious structures. Historical tyrants like Hitler were part of this agenda or served its interest. Destruction is not accidental, but part of a larger plot to create a new world system. This quote reflects the core of fascist ideology, a proud embrace of barbarism, a belief in purifying destruction, and a desire to end the current world order by force. Josephus, first century Israelite historian, in his warnings of the fascist empire, Rome and the New Rome. The German Jewish writer Leon Wagner used his Josephus trilogy to warn of the coming fascist empire. Wagner, a German Jewish intellectual, was writing these novels as fascism was rising in Germany and across Europe. The trilogy uses the life of Flavius Josephus, the first century Jewish historian who survived the destruction of Jerusalem and became a client of the Roman Empire, to explore several urgent themes. Rome was viewed as a proto-fascist empire. Wagner portrays imperial Rome, especially under emperors like Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, as a model of authoritarian brutality wrapped in imperial glory. In the book, there's a personality cult, spectacles, military conquest, censorship, and ruthless suppression of dissent, all of which eerily foreshadows Hitler's regime. In The Jew of Rome, the contrast between Roman pomp and inner decay parallels the Nazi vision of a new order, grand on the outside, morally bankrupt inside. Wagner uses this to warn his readers in the 1930s. Don't be passive. Don't trust tyrants. Don't think it can't happen here.